it's very nice to see a lot of people joining on time and trying to be aware about these issues. And it's very nice and encouraging that people have that willingness, that consciousness about this global issue. So in terms of my journey starts related to plastic and recycling back in 2019. It's a very short duration. So what I'm going to share with you is all the stuff I learned throughout the last few years. And I'm sure that all the facts I'm sharing can be crossed against this from this fact check. In terms of climate change, what climate change? So climate change means simply in a linear terms. So there are two parameters like conditions, short-term changes in the atmosphere and the longer-term changes in the atmosphere. So the rainfall, the temperature, the humidity, the wind patterns, the speed of the wind, with other parameters will really change the short-term different conditions in the atmosphere. So we call it as weather, and it's very short-term. Might be a day or two, or less than a week, or less than a month. But when it comes to climate change, the climate means a longer term, during a longer period of time, there are significant changes in the atmosphere that we call as climate change. So, so how does this climate change happen? Because of waste. It happens in many ways, but before that, we need to understand what is waste. So waste means whatever after production or after consumption, the leftovers, which sometimes it doesn't have economical value or any sort of meaningful thing. But after doing some processing, it might be converted into a resource. So based on the generation, based on the source, based on the origination, based on the type, recyclability, material made out of it, we classify waste. So normally that's where we find in terms of type, very basic classification, biodegradable waste, undegradable waste. And then when it comes to source, either it will be a waste generated within the household, or whether it is generated in the industry, or even it was generated in the medical, like hospitals. So that's where we find plastic, right. We find plastic as a packaging material by this fossil fuel extraction process. By after the refining thing, we find plastic came to existence, and then plastic was very convenient in terms of business, in terms of usability, and it was lightweight and less breakable. So it's like people use this polymer to come to use as a packaging material. Just hold on. There's a technical wrong in my slides.
You want me to share the screen for you?
Yes,
or?
please.
Okay, sure.
Right. Yeah. So extremely sorry for the technical issue. So what I was missed was this greenhouse gas effect. Greenhouse effect. So in this atmosphere, there are a lot of different particles to different chemicals to air, different sort of there. But more or less, when there are gases like carbon dioxide, methane, or any sort of gases, when the emission goes out, and then what happened will be it will retain in the atmosphere, and then the temperature rise in because it works as a AC. So then the temperature rising, and then the changes happens in the climate. So when we will not get the adequate rainfall, and it leads to droughts, and then we will run out. We will have different sort of when it comes to wind, different sort of hurricanes to different cyclones. Everything will happen. So this is what it's happening in because of climate change, and also it will affect for humans and also marine ecosystems and all the biodiversity ecosystems. So that's happening because of the temperature rise, right? Temperature rise happens because of different other things. So we'll talk about that. Waste is again something else. Next, keep me. Yeah, next slide.
Hold on.
Yeah. Right. So I was explaining there are different types of waste, degradable and undegradable. Obviously, when it comes to degradable waste, we know that all the food waste comes there. And then what happened was we normally go and put those stuff into composting, or we go and put this into landfill. So when it comes to landfill, then these chemical reactions happens, and then it releases methane and carbon dioxide. That's how it goes up. And also certain like surface runaways and even in the ground water, the leaks, it will also go and pollute the waterways. So that's what happening. So that's but that leads to the climate change, of course, when it comes to degradable waste. Next. Right. Next slide, please.
Yeah, hold on.
Cacophony of extreme views, which you sometimes find on Twitter.
Because of the plastic came into existence for this fossil fuel extraction thing, and it was very lucrative. And then people use plastic as a packaging material, and then globalization comes in, and then people trying to import export stuff. And again, then in terms of consumption patterns and the population rise, so to feed 8 billion people, we need micro packaging, and it has to be there were different legal compliances came because of food hygiene factors. So somehow plastic was showing that it has the most appealing and lucrative and the most nicest solution as a packaging material related to other stuff, glass and paper. But somehow because of that, because of the existing business models, plastic became the #1 packaging material. Next slide, please. Right. So what happened was like when it comes to plastic, non-degradable waste. So how does it contributes for climate change? So it contributes even from starting point. So from the extraction, the machines, the extractions from the point of extractions and the refining, and then the manufacturing, and then going to incineration, recycling, landfills, from all these perspectives, non-degradable, like when it comes to very particular to plastic, it contributes to climate change. So you see on the second figure graph, so relatively, when the plastic pollution goes out, even the climate change figures has gone up. Next slide. So there are 7 types of plastic. It's very easy to understand the logic. It's when it starts with number 1 to 7. So to identify the types of plastic, again, it's very easy. It's like you have to check the bottom of the particular container, the bottle. So then you see in this circular mark, within the mark, it has clearly mentioned a number. So the number denotes the type. So that's how you understand the types of the plastic. But unfortunately, certain manufacturers, certain producers do not mention the material type. So that's a huge issue when it comes to recycling. If you don't know the particular type, suppose you are blending 2 types together, so then the entire lot, sometimes it cannot be taken into the different production. So it is pretty much important and point to emphasize. Anyone who use plastic, it's their obligation and duty to make sure that they have to mark the plastic type within the container. So anyone who picks it knows what is this material is made out of, and what is this material, and whether it is recyclable or it is non-recyclable. So, so everything starts with like number 1, PET. PET contains all the types of beverage bottles, most of the beverage bottles which is in use in Sri Lanka, carbonated drinks, and also purified water bottles goes on PET. So PET is blow mold, and then when it comes to PET, the specialty is PET is very light, thin, and then it's very flexible, right? So that's you will obviously agree with me because of the beverage bottles what we use is blow mold, and clearly most of the bottles in Sri Lanka, they have clearly mentioned what type of plastic bottle it is, which is PET. And then PET has three different colors. In 4 different colors initially, it was plain color, and then the blue, and the green, and the amber color. So now, I think when it comes to legal framework, I think the PET Consortium and the Chamber of Commerce and Ministry of Environment, I think they agreed, and the recyclers agreed to go on only plain color, green color, and amber. So now in Sri Lanka, we only see three colors of PET more or less, right? And then the number 2 is HDP, high density polyethylene. So HDP, we find HDP materials when it comes to shampoo bottles, detergent bottles, softener bottle, clothes softener bottles. So pretty much towards non-food chemical stuff. But HDP is more or less you can recycle it, that material couple of times. When it comes to PVC, we obviously know all these pipes are done with PVC. We use these pipes because of this material. We need to buy PVC materials. Apart from PVC pipes, the PVC is being used to cables and also for food chores. It has been used. And when it comes to LDP, low density polyethylene, when it comes to polythene bags, when it comes to wrappers, when it comes to small bags, more or less it's LDP. And then when it comes to PP, it's like food grade. So pretty much advanced than HDP, PP, polypropylene, that goes with food grade stuff. A lot of ice cream containers and food containers are made out of, and medicine bottles made out of PP. Certain yogurt cups also done by PP. When it comes to PS, number 6. So number 6 stands for polystyrene, the rigiform stuff, right? But there's a set of PS, which is HIPS. That's where we use these HIPS as yogurt cups material. So to do yogurt cups, we use PS, polystyrene, HIPS. And now number 7, the final one. So there, I told you there are different types of material, different types of polymer and resins. So whatever which are not belongs to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will goes and end up in number 7, more or less. Certain toys, CDs, certain hard plastic, those goes into number 7. When it comes to recyclability, PET can be recycled. So Sri Lanka, we have a one company, Eco Spindles, who use PET and convert PET into a yarn, and they export that stuff and they bring foreign income from that, exchange from that. And then HDP, more or less, it is being used by the local recyclers. PVC, certain PVC is recycled in Sri Lanka. Yes, we do recycle LDP in Sri Lanka. PP, obviously, PP is recycled, and polystyrene, not the majority of polystyrene, but insignificant amount of, like when it comes to HIPS, there's a one facility in Sri Lanka who recycle these yogurt cups and do a seed tray. When it comes to other types of plastic, more or less, those goes into landfill and incineration. But in other countries, and even there's an organization called Katan Upcycling. They use certain wrappers and stuff and do files. So there are different upcycling and recycling methods for type 7, but majority of type 7 items goes to incineration and landfill. So that's what happened based on the types of plastic. Next slide, please. Right. Plastic. Okay. Right. So, so the life cycle of plastic. So, as we said, the extraction process goes on, and then from that they use virgin pellets, right? Plastic resins, and then it will either be more or less Sri Lanka. We import stuff. Before the COVID, 1,600 metric tons of PET is being imported per month, and then because of the requirements, the packages. So these certain recyclers and manufacturers, they do these packages and bottles, and then it goes to the brands, and the brands use it, and they will put their product within the bottle or the bag, and then it goes into warehouses, and then to supermarkets, to modern trade, to retail, and then it goes into our hand. We go and purchase from that from particular places, and then we consume it, and then it will goes and end up in our kitchen at the garbage bin, and then local council person comes in, either we go somewhere else and we drop off stuff, or we burn it, and then that's how it works. If it is a circular economy thing, it will go into a material recovery facility rather than a landfill, and then again it goes into recycling washing, everything happens and go into manufacturing again as an input. So that's what happening to plastic as a life cycle. Next slide, please. Right. So this is pretty much an alarming stats, I would say. The life span of a plastic. So obviously, it will be there in the earth for 400 years to 500 years. So that's the bad side of this plastic. If we mismanage plastic, what happened with it will be remain then and there. What happened is within the first few years, if it is exposed to sunlight, then it will lose the color and it will start degrade. It will get into pieces. It will degrade into it will break down into pieces. So these pieces again, it will break down into smaller and smaller tiny pieces, and what happened is it will flow into waterways. So it's pretty much alarming. Our convenience, our purchasing patterns will create a like 400-year long problems to this earth. So that's the bad side of plastic. Next slide, please. So when it comes to Sri Lankan context, we are a very blessed country, I would say. I think all of you will agree on the biodiversity we have as a country within this shorter, with a smaller land area relative to other countries. So our these valuable assets are being vulnerable, threatened because of this plastic issue when it comes to elephants, when it comes to Ampara, Dambul, Polonnaru, and there are different other areas where you can see, go and see what's happening there. So our beaches have been now been covering by plastic, and birds, and then these goats, cows, and monkeys now they are without knowing, without doing it, without producing or consuming any sort of stuff. Because of this, they thought of this is a food, and it can be digestible. They literally eat this stuff, and then they have a tragic death at the end of the day. So that's happening in Sri Lanka. Next slide. So, so this is what happening again in Sri Lanka. So we have more than 250 open dumping yards. People used to burn plastic. Again, it links to the climate change, releasing toxic gases, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide stuff. And then we have a lot of landfills in Sri Lanka, and we have nearly over 100 rivers in Sri Lanka, and all these waterways are now being polluted with plastic. And we as humans, whenever we have land, we used to dig a hole and a pit, and then put plastic there, and then just bury those stuff. And when it comes to as Sri Lanka as an island, so transboundary plastic issue also there for us. So it's really it's sad to see that this island is going to cover up with plastic very soon. So next slide. So I think the most important message for today is like, because of the recycling day. So we as people, we have to use our knowledge and our commitment towards stopping these things. So we have to somehow try to take actions to stop this rolling. Otherwise, our generations to come will have significant impact with negative impact because of this. Next slide. So next slide, please. So how do we do this thing? So everything starts with management. So as Peter Drucker said, do the right thing and do the right thing and doing the right thing, right way is the way we manage these things. So waste is obvious. So based on the population, based on the social and economical activities we do, we use a lot of plastic, but are we managing plastic really well? I don't think we have managed plastic really well. So what we have done in Sri Lanka was like we used to hide plastic and other waste. So it was very easy thing to blame others and to dump all the stuff into Muturajavela or Mitotamulla or Karadiana or any other landfill in Sri Lanka, and then just practicing these for years and years. So that's what's happening in Sri Lanka. That's what's happened. So we need to take actions, corrective actions to manage this issue. So next slide, please. So we need to focus on these aspects: recycling and reuse, waste removal, waste treatment, waste transportation, waste storage and collection, and landfill disposal. Next slide, please. So before managing things, we need to understand how does this waste originates. So if you know the origination, and then if you know the end point, if it is recycling or any other sort of management way, so then what we have to do is like we need to make sure that whatever the things originated in the the point, from the A point, it has taken into the B point, whatever how we manage. So that's not happening. So what we see is what we normally see is like there are local authorities empowered by the act, the government bodies, municipal councils. So they have these people, staff. We call them Parisara Mituro, right? Environmental friends, right? So they come in tractors. They just collect all the litter, the waste, trash in one go to their tractor, and then they do go and dump in a particular designated area. But luckily, I have seen things are changing, not in the rate we expected, but I have seen certain positive steps where certain municipal council really putting efforts towards managing the waste. Yes, there are arguments and criticism that they are not doing as expected. But as a person from this industry, rather than cursing anyone or accusing or criticizing, but certain government organizations and people is trying to do something. It's happening now. They have started segregation. They have days, particular days. We find dates. So for a particular day, we come to collect organic waste. For a particular day, we come in inorganic mixed waste. And for certain days, we'll come to collect glass and other sort of iron and other stuff. So that's I have clearly seen. And these organizations who try to advance their normal operations, what they do is like now they have a small material recovery facility. They do sorting and they try to create waste into value. So that's happening in Sri Lanka, and there are a lot of work needs to be done. I do agree on that. Next slide, please. So like now we talk about plastic, we now talk about waste management. So let's ideate a nice solution. How do we solve this waste issue? So when it comes to waste, there may be multiple types of solution. There is no one true solution. So the biggest solution which consists of many more small steps, small scale solutions. And always we need to focus on the break-even models. But when it comes to local authorities, we pay taxes to government, and the government use these taxes to collect trash and manage this stuff, right? Whether it is a loss-making issue, whether it is a profit-making operation, whether it is a break-even. So we need to focus on numbers, whether we are doing it more accurately or whether is there's a space to improve. When it comes to data, so I think the climate factor team is also into this data. We do not have first-hand data, primary data.
Sangha, you're not audible at the moment. Kindly hold on with us. I think our speaker dropped out due to network issues. He will be back with us soon.
Right. Sorry. Again, a technical issue from my end. So then we need data to analyze this issue and understand this issue, and then take proactive and reactive measurements. When it comes to actions, so we have different levels of engagements. So national level, provincial level, organizational level, individual level, household level, as a family. So there are a lot of actions can be taken, but what I've seen as a person is like in Sri Lanka, we always look into the big picture. We do not commit to the whatever the best practices and try to manage it within ourselves. We always focus on, oh, the government has to fix this. No. But yes, government is a legal framework creator and a facilitator, but we as the consumer, we also are a polluter, so we need to make sure that whatever the things we use to consume has whatever the remainings of what we consume has to properly manage, and the brands and the manufacturers and the producers has to also think on the same perspective. And again, we need to team up on solving this issue. And in terms of government has to act as a framework creator, facilitator, and a mediator to solve this issue. Next slide, please. Right. So how do we when it comes to recycling, right? How we start recycling? So recycling start within the prototype itself. When you design the product, in the design table itself, you need to make sure that whatever the product we produce, it can be recyclable, the material. So the length, the width, the height, the diameter, whatever the all the parameters has to direct the product to make it more easy or to make it more recyclable. So improve recyclability is one good thing. So that will drive circular economy. And then we need to focus on the waste hierarchy. The waste hierarchy starts with prevention. and then minimization and reuse and recycling and energy recovery, and last only it comes as disposal for landfill. So when it comes to prevention, whatever the product we design, if we can produce it without plastic, that's great. That's how we tackle tackle this issue. Yes, we need to use plastic, but if you can minimize it, that's great. And then if you use plastic, but you have to, if you're using plastic which can reuse, for an example, we have seen certain plastic, we reuse it repetitively. For an example, ice cream containers to certain bottles, containers, we reuse it for a couple of times. So then that's a way of aligning to the hierarchy, waste hierarchy. And then recycling comes in, fourth option. And then if you can't recycle it, okay, so then we have to put it into energy creation, incineration process. If you can't burn it and make energy, then it goes to disposal. And then the collaboration. So when it comes to collaborations, particularly for a brand, right? Now Sri Lanka, we have 25 districts. Suppose one brand has to collect everything, right? So then he has to have his 25 representative aligned in all 25 districts. So we have more than 200, 300 brands or beyond that. So everyone has to work in their silos rather than collaborations. So then if you collaborate, what happens is we will use whatever the existing platforms, channels, and everything to solve this issue. What I've noticed in Sri Lanka is like, we do not collaborate. We really want to work in isolation in our own soft corners. We don't want to, for an example, soft drinks brands or anyone, they don't want to work. They really want to work alone. They don't want to work as a consortium or anyone. So likewise, it's not only that brands, irrespective anything, when it comes to waste, everyone wants to work on their silos. So that's pretty much a bad thing, right? If you want to solve, you have to be aligned. If it is recycler, again that thing. If it is a collector, again the same thing. It applies for everyone. If it is individuals, yes. If it is government organization, again it is like wasting energy and resources and time. So to solve this issue, we need to strengthen the EPR framework. We need to drive awareness. We need to start segregating waste, and again, technology. So applying new technology really helps to solve this issue. So in terms of other side of the world, right? They're trying to figure it out, different bacteria to eat plastic, and there are different materials which has the similar character of plastic, but it is degradable, biodegradable. There are bags which can be compostable within 120 days or 90 days. So that's there. So the technology plays a vital role to find replacement to plastic. Next slide, please. Right. So you might wonder as individuals what we can do in terms of this sort of a gigantic issue. So everything starts with 3 words: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. It's just 3 R's, right? 3 R's, 7 R, 4 R. You can name it. If you can embrace these R's into your life cycle, I think that's the simplest way you can be the change agent in your community. So if you can reduce use of plastic, if you can reuse whatever the stuff within which you have, and if you can you can direct materials into recycling, and that's what you can do as individuals. Even this can happen within your family, right? Your organization. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of ways to reduce. I think all of you are pretty much aware on these things, very simple stuff, right? And then, right. Then reuse, it's obviously, it's there in our blood. We use, next slide, please. We reuse stuff very oftenly. So then when it comes to clothes, again, polyester related stuff, the second largest polluter, right? Fast fashion. When you go into dump yards, you will see a lot of clothes, lot of bags, right? They are in the dump yards. So think on reusing, right? And then next slides. And then the recycling. I think because of the importance of the day, even though recycling, I have to mention that, tell that recycling is the least best option. Refusing and reusing is the refusing is the best option, and then reusing and least option is recycling, because recycling requires a lot of energy, lot of effort, lot of resources. Next slide, please. So when it comes to recycling, recycling means you collect the post-consume materials and you put into a process. You do color segregation, type segregation, you transport this stuff, you processing, you crush it, you bale it, you crush it, and you put in those into a processing conveyor where you wash these stuff, you remove the mud, you remove iron particles, you remove labels, and then you crush these stuff and you melt it, and then you put into an extruder, and then you get pellets, and then the pellets will go into again the manufacturing stuff. That's what we call circular economy works in. So this is what recycling stands. There is right. Next slide, please. So when it comes to data, when it comes to Sri Lanka, particularly Sri Lankan Ministry of Environment, Central Environment Authority, the Western Province Waste Management Authority, and different waste management authorities in different provinces, local councils, NGOs, different foreign funding agencies, Chamber of Commerce. So these are the people who recyclers, informal collectors, formal collectors. So these are the people who behind in this process. So now as I said, we see positive things happening now. Sri Lanka has a National Action Plan on Plastic Waste Management. So now they have a plan. So I have extracted one data out of it. That it's on the 7th page. Estimated plastic material flow in Sri Lanka 2020. So that per day the plastic waste generation is 930 metric tons per day, right? So the mismanaged plastic quantities it's 68%, which is 638, right? So 32% of that is collected and put in and send it for recycling. So this data is related to this report, and I think Waste Management Authority has the dumping. Whatever dumping yards, all the data, kilo weights are there when it comes to dumping yards from 13 municipal councils drop off mixed waste to organic waste to different dump yards. So that data is there with the Western Province Waste Management Authority. So pretty much when it comes to recycled facts, so the largest recycler, EcoSpindle, when it comes to PET, he do more or less can be, there may be a 20% error, but more or less 200 metric tons per month recycled, but they are trying to increase it. And there are a couple of recyclers in Sri Lanka on recycling stuff. So next slide, please. So as I said, Central Environment Authority, the legal authority were about in terms of solid waste management. Now, again, a positive thing I'm sharing with you all, Sri Lanka has a volunteer extended producer responsibility drafted by, facilitated by Chamber of Commerce and Central Environment Authority, and there's a foreign agency funded project. And now we have now the ministry has an ministry is looking forward to implement EPR on beverages, PET bottles, PET materials. So what happened is like the producer, the brand is liable to report the leakage, whatever the amount they put into the market, the amount, the plastic kilo weight, and they have to, in return, they have to collect back certain amount of quantities. It might be start with a figure, I don't know exactly, but maybe 15, 20 or 30, but one day the roadmap says it will go into more than 80%, something like that. When it comes to rules and regulations, so there are a lot of rules and regulations related to plastic, but some directions is not in favor of reducing plastic stuff because of the people use certain loopholes to and trying to go within these holes. So that's how the government cannot reinforce the certain stuff. For an example, the lunch sheet, initially lunch sheet was banned in Sri Lanka. Initially it was made out of HDP. So I think anyone can correct me. The law came as we are banning lunch sheets made out of HDP, and then people use LDP, 14 micron gamut of lunch sheet bags. That's how the initial thin lunch sheets now being very thick. So that's how it works in Sri Lanka. Next slide, please. So this is about what I was initially about to share with you is the context. So now I'm going to share with you on my personal experience on as an individual, what I have done on this thing since 2019. So I started something called Zero Trash. So I became a garbage collector, I would say. And then I came up with a platform called zerotrash.lk. And what I do is I collect plastic, I sort it, I report this stuff, and I reward people non-monetary benefits in terms of collection. Next slide, please. So I started collecting plastic in my backyard 2019 without any employees, and then I started a very small material recovery facility 2021 with certain partners. So that's my journey. Initially, I didn't know what types of plastic are there. So when I went to collect my very first plastic lot, I collected all the types of plastic. Most of then I send it for recycling. When I transport those stuff into recycling center, then they only pick PET bottles, right? So others I have to collect back and then take those back into my home. It was returned. So then only I figured out there are 7 types of plastics. How to identify plastic? It was very tedious learning process. Next slide, please. So we offer different collection options. So we are based at Borolaskamoor. People can drop off plastic and other recyclables. We do bin collection for certain brands. We do paid on-demand collections. We have bag collection system, and especially we do awareness campaigns for organizations, employees, because we know ESG, environmental, social, and governance is a vital role, and people now corporates really want to build a consciousness among employees about waste management and other sort of environmental stuff. So we do it as assignment. Next slide, please. There were 2 innovations I brought into the market. One is whenever you come to our zero trash collection center at Borlaskamua, either you can get a vegetable plant out of it, or either if you have a dialogue connection, we give you 250 megabytes in return of the whatever the plastic amount you brought in to our center. So that's how I reward people in non-monetary benefit mode to encourage people to get into this area. And I have to say, I have 100 repeated clientele for the moment to Borleska more. So it's very encouraging to see people really put into action without talking. They segregate their stuff once a month. They will bring our stuff, right? It's very encouraging. Next slide, please. So we created zerotrash.lk for corporates. Sometimes they don't have reports. So we did this platform, people to register and report their leak, whatever the collections details there. Next slide, please. And then this is how it looks like. We collected more than 60,000 kgs of different recyclables, and we put into recycling process. It's via at Borleska. The best thing I would say is this material recovery facility was one of its kind because we were discussing and pitching this since 2019 that Sri Lanka needs 25 of these, and people can fearlessly go into an location and drop off their plastic and contribute for recycling and circular economy. So that's here we are. We have done this based on our capacity. So next slide, please. So what I always promote young people is we need to take reactive and proactive measures. So I pass down my knowledge and my experience, my mistakes, my learnings to young people. We need to tackle this plastic issue within the ground itself. If it is reach waterways and ocean, it's very difficult to tackle, right? Next slide, please. So we work with different government organizations and private organizations, NGOs. So we do different. So I had the chance to do composition analysis in terms of one of the dumping yards in Sri Lanka. It was pretty much eye-opener as the most intelligent creature of this earth. Our mismanagement and our, I would say, consumption patterns really make this earth a polluted location, right? So this is Karadiana, very close to Bolgoda, whereas Ganga. All the ways, so this has pretty much a negative effect towards the Bolgoda ecosystem. Next slide, please. So we work with different partners, different groups, recyclers to brands to different people, but I'm sure that we have done very less in terms of this sector. We need to do a lot, and we are looking for like-minded people to grow this network. Next slide, please. Right. So I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. So everything depends on mindset. To crack this thing, to crack the plastic issue, and control its contribution towards climate change. I think our mindsets is pretty much plays a vital role. Our awareness. So I think here we have nearly 20 people, good people in this platform. I'm sure you got some knowledge, something, 1 or 2 points about plastic and its effect. And in terms of classification, whatever, 1 or 2 good points. Try to pass down these points towards your immediate family members, to if you work, to your corporate colleagues. If you teach to your students, if you are working in an organization, whatever the members of this organization, if you are in a movement, try to literate people about this issue. Try to pass down this knowledge. People do not know there are 7 types of plastic. People think that, oh, when it comes to plastic, all the types of plastic can be recycled. People still don't know when you burn plastic, it is pretty much a negative thing when it comes to your respiratory system. It is cancerous. People do not know these things. So I'm requesting all of you on this important day, all of you, 20 people know these things. So please pass down to this thing. And then if you have that mindset, if you pass down this, if you put into actions, I'm sure things will more brighter than today. And next slide, please. So it's me, Hasanka Paduka. I'm being I'm a social entrepreneur. So my organization is Vibo Solutions. I do this zerotrash.lk and thuru.lk tree planting initiative along with him in the Jaiveer. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm done. Thank you. And thank you for bearing all these issues and paying attention on this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hasanka. That was a very fruitful presentation. I think we all found it very useful. Apologies again for the disturbances we had initially, and I'm glad that we overcame it and we managed to have a successful session after all. So now I think it's time for the discussion. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions. So I think Shyamal Prasad has his hand up. So I will unmute you and we can you can ask the question.
Hello, madam. Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, madam.
You're audible.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
hello,
you're
madam.
audible.
Are you getting me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
So discussion. Okay, thank you. It is a unique discussion. But here actually I live in Assam. In our municipality, there is no any system to manage all sorts of non-biodegradable waste, including electronic waste also. So I proposed them also. Will you please forward these rules to me? How will I get? Hello, madam, are you getting me?
Yes. Hasanka.
Yeah, I think Shyamal.
Actually, our municipality, they are not taking any steps. There is no any recycler here.
Yeah. So Shyamal, I think your question is very clear. Yes. So I think what we can do. Yeah, Shyamal. So shall I answer?
And it is my first question is that is there any emission of GHG, greenhouse gases, if only plastics are dumped in open field? Because through the degradation process, is there any source? Hello, madam, are you getting me?
Yes, Shyamal. You can continue.
Okay. Is there any source of adding GHG in our atmosphere while degrading process, natural degradation process of plastics and plastic materials?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think Hasanka, you can answer.
I want to get it.
Yes.
Right. I think the very first question is in terms of his local municipality. So the best thing is like someone has to take leadership and then start this sorting. So then, as I said, material recovery facility has to set up. It might be an informal, it might be not an established one. At least we call these scavengers or the informal collectors. Some sort of a mechanism need to set up to start collection. So when you have collection, right, for an example, when you have 1 or 2 plastic bottle, it doesn't mean anything. But if you have few 100 to 1,000 kgs of plastic, then it is a resource. So if you can bring down stuff into one location, I'm sure some recycler is pretty much interested to come and collect and pay you and take this stuff. That's how this works because materials has a value. The value only generates when you have quantities. That's so. If the local authority does not pay any attention, if you or anyone of your community can grow someone to collect this stuff and do segregation, based on the segregation and the collection, third party recycler might be interested, and then I'm sure they will come and collect this stuff. That's how you sort this stuff. In terms of this GHG gas emission because of the natural degradation process, Shamal, I'm not a scientific person to give a very true answer. So I think my answer is like whatever happens in the landfill, even it is a natural thing or phenomena, whatever, the GHG gas emission will happen for sure, and it's not something good. I think that's what I can comment at this moment.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question. So I request everyone to turn on their cameras now if it's possible. And also I think Harish has a question as well. We'll go to Harish and you can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Kitmi. Thank you, Hasanka. Your presentation was really lovely, awakening and inspiring. My question is, like you gave an example how individually we can, take care of this plastic problem. What I wanted to ask and what I wanted to know is that there are many initiatives that come in, especially entrepreneurship, or we call them green entrepreneurships, where initiatives are taken to recycle plastic, maybe reuse plastic, and to dispose of plastic in a more efficient and eco-friendly manner. But what many organizations across the world have been reporting is that these green initiatives may not be that green at all, and it could be just eyewash. So have you come across any such examples where the organizations or industries have claimed that they're taking care of plastic waste and not degrading the environment, but actually they are creating more problems for the environment and contributing more towards climate change? Thank you.
Right, Harish. So I'll break down your question into two parts. One is this green entrepreneurship or the social entrepreneurial elements, whether it is a very profitable thing. Yes, you need, as I said, certain initiatives has to break even. Even it looks very nice and appealing. Break even, this sort of initiative is very difficult. And I too myself, zero trash also has a huge issue on going into break evens. We are in existence more than many years. Still, we haven't not come into the break even point. Why? Because of the inflation, cost of collections, and competitiveness. Everything is there. So that's where this brand has to come and refinance the deficit. That's called extended producer principles comes into that piece. So that happened. That's my answer to the first question. And this, or the government has to the government make taxes on us, no? When it comes to pollution, like refund deposits or whatever. So that fund has to go into a particular way. It goes incentives or substitutes for collectors, right? That's one thing. And the second one would be, so when it comes to brands, right? So the brand has its own problem. Brand has its intelligence and capacity and capability to sell their product in any remote corner in this world, right? I hope everyone is agree with me. Even in a deep jungle, very close to a deep jungle, they will sell their stuff. But when it comes to return pathway, it is a tricky thing. You can't bring that whatever that thing you solved, right? So that's the issue with this thing, right? So the current business model does not facilitate that reverse pathway, right? The reverse pathway is not facilitated. None of these people accounted or provisioned, right? 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 15 LKR or anything to recover this material, right? So what happened is, like, even we pay a few more rupees, 100 rupees for a particular product and take it to home and consume, and when it is thrown, there is no value, literally material value out of it, right? Even you get a value, that value is not sufficient enough to collect it, sort it, process it, and send it for recycling, transport. So that's the deficit. So that's where you see most of the brands, they have nice campaigns and other stuff, right? They do have one-off expenses that showing that they are doing this project and this project, but none of them has intentionally kept margins or provisions to recover these stuff. So I don't want to highlight one or two. I think you obviously know who are the people, right? So it's there not in Sri Lanka, but also in other countries in the world. So, but if it is ESG, if the government framework comes in, then we can show that they have invested on a right format in terms of recovery. So EPR has to impose both sides, for customer and also consumer. So both polluters has to penalize equally to fix this issue.
Thank you. I think that explained, gave the answer to the question. Also, there is one more question. So Sri Lanka in 2019 was ranked as the 5th largest plastic polluter in the world, according to, I think, on a Day website. And I'm not sure if these statements and ranks are factually correct, and if this is scientifically backed. And this became quite viral around the country after this ranking was dropped. So can I know if this is actually possible for a small island to be the 5th largest plastic polluter, and how can you actually assess, who is, generating more plastic waste in the world?
Right. Again, a tricky question because I don't have the exact numbers, but I'll share my view on this, right? You know who import which material, right? So that's there. And then there are certain loopholes that even import, the production, the usage, the possession of the particular material goes to different brands. So then you know who consume a lot of brands because you know their sales figures. But none of these figures are transparent. So we don't know actually in which quantities they produce certain stuff and which quantities the leakage is. That's number one. I think the government is also trying to struggle on getting these data, right? From their side, they said, okay, transparency has to be done on it's a very competitive data, etc. but that's a loophole. So then we don't have. When it comes to collection, we have, Sri Lanka has more than, I would say, registered collectors, informal collectors, scavengers. Suppose 5,000 above community on this waste management stuff. None of these people, I would say none of, like most of the people do not share reports with Central Environment Authority. And then the government, even again, does not have the right true picture about the collection. What government has is for the moment is from the recyclers who has this compliance to reporting back what are the amounts which they have recycled. So that's where we see this problem. We do not know the generation. We do not know the collection. What we have is an ample truth, insignificant amount of collection data. So the claims, if you do a very sample study, you might, like brand audit, you will see in a beach, or I think there are a couple of brand audits done by different environmental related organizations, independent organizations. So that's there, data is there, and global stuff are there. But transboundary plastic issue again affecting Sri Lanka from Indian Ocean to from Kaminsa. So irrespective of the rank, Sri Lanka has a significant amount of plastic problem. Even if they mark us as fifth polluter, right? If our government, NGOs, organizations, brands, and individuals can use this so-called false claim into a right pathway, I think that's what we really need to do. Taking this blame and try to correct this as soon as possible. I think that's how we need to put these sort of issues into the right track. Otherwise, we will be number one very soon.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very good answer to that question. I hope we don't have any more questions. And since we're reaching the end of the session, I would really like to thank Mr. Hasanka Paduka for taking your time. I'm sure you're busy today, especially because it's World Recycling Day, and agreeing to do this session with us, and giving such a nice and informative presentation to our audience. Thank you very much, Hasanka. And thank you everyone for joining and staying with us and all your questions. Stay tuned and we will get back to you with our next Zoom webinar soon. Until then, goodbye and have a good evening.
Thank you everyone giving me this opportunity with me and the climate fact checks team, and also the lovely audience who bear all these issues and be attentive to the things I shared with you. Thank you.
Thank you.